The Michigan Man Podcast, episode 227. Brady is gone, and the search is on. Interim Athletic Director Jim Hackett says being a Michigan man will not be a prerequisite for the next head coach. Buckle up. It should be an interesting ride the next few weeks, and it might not be over until early January. This is the Michigan Man Podcast on GBMW Go Blue Michigan Wolverine for Wolverine fans from coast to coast. Go Blue and welcome to this week's show. I'm your host, Mike Fitzpatrick. When the curtain came down on this season's Saturday afternoon in Columbus, we all knew change was coming. Jim Hackett said he would meet with Brady Hoke and review the season and then make a decision. That decision was rendered just after noon on Tuesday when Coach Hoke was informed by Hackett he was no longer the head coach. Now the work begins. On today's Michigan Gameday segment, we'll be joined by Wolverine beat writer Nick Baumgardner from MLive for his thoughts on Brady Hoke, Jim Hackett, and the search for Michigan's next coach. Before that, let's take a look at this week's Wolverine News and Notes. If it was a normal first week of December, we would be recapping the Ohio State game, waiting for a bowl game announcement, and in the meantime, catching up on basketball and hockey news. This isn't a normal week, though. For the third time in 7 years, we find ourselves in the hunt for a new football coach. This time, the search is being led by Interim Athletic Director Jim Hackett. How long will it take? Will Jim Harbaugh come home? Will we hire someone with no ties to Michigan football? There are many questions and few answers right now. We'll just have to watch this process play out. It will be a fascinating month of December, rest assured, and we might have to wait until maybe even early January to find out who our next head coach will be. That's okay. Michigan football is at a pivotal point right now. Rich Rodriguez was a disaster, despite what he thinks, and Brady just couldn't seize the moment. The next choice has to be the right one, whether it's a Michigan man or not. There is too much at stake. On today's Michigan Game Day, Wolverine beat writer Nick Baumgardner from MLive is my guest. He joins me next on the Michigan Man Podcast on GBMW Go Blue Michigan Wolverine. With us on our Michigan Game Day segment this week is Michigan beat writer Nick Baumgardner from MLive. Great to have you back on this crazy week, Nick.
Always good to be here, Mike.
Well, to the surprise of no one, Brady Hoke was fired on Tuesday, Nick. Jim Hackett said it was a difficult decision, but a necessary one. I think we all agree with that. He was very clear, even though he praised Coach Hoke, on why he dismissed him, wasn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. And it was important, I think, for him, it sounded like it was important for him personally there to make sure that he, really made it clear that it was, a difficult situation for him. Not necessarily a difficult decision, I don't think, but it was a difficult spot that they found themselves in because, what people don't realize, I don't think, from the outside, I guess, is that people really do like Brady Hoke. The players love him, his staff loves him, his peers love him, all these types of things. I mean, he's very well respected. The former Michigan players really, really like him as a person, but as a football coach, it just isn't there, and that's ultimately what this is all about. So you can praise him for all these other things, but he does not win any games, then that's it. So when you tore everything else back and looked at really where he was, I mean, the record just continued to fall. It just wasn't good enough. I mean, we can go down all the laundry list of things. We've done it many, many times, but change just was needed, and it was sort of inevitable, and it was handled in a classy manner, but it was handled the right way, I think.
It really was a classy manner, I thought. And you know, Nick, when coaches are dismissed, and we've seen it many times around the country in college football, many times there's sort of a pack your bags and get out sentiment from fans.
Yeah.
You really didn't get that about Coach Hoke's situation. There was disappointment, yes, but it was hard not to like Coach Hoke. You wanted him to succeed. That's sort of the feeling we all came away with, I think.
Yeah, I would say that from what I could gather from well-adjusted fans, that's what I would hear. You know, you hear there's others that wanted him fired at the end of last year or even prior, and there's a lot of people that didn't think he would ever work here. To be fair, because if we look back on it, Brady was brought in here with a sub 500 record. He was a MAC coach and a 2-year coach at San Diego State, and I believe he'd had as many losing seasons as he had winning seasons. I think he had more losing seasons than he had winning seasons. So there was a lot to look at on the surface, and you say, is he ever going to work? But I think once people got to know him a little bit, especially for that first year, then a lot of people really did want him to succeed. And I got a sense after everything, people were frustrated all year. I think people were saying things maybe they didn't really mean. But once it was all said and done, and they did remove him, I did hear from a lot of people that said they felt bad that it was that this guy lost his dream job, pretty much, that it didn't work out for him. But at the same time, everyone understood it, and on they go.
Well, it's only been Tuesday that he was fired, Nick. Looking back, and I know we'll look back as the years roll by on the Brady Hoke era, when or where do you think this thing maybe started to unravel for Brady?
I think it completely started to unravel, or it was off the tracks, probably after the 2013 season. But I think it started before that. I really think that, if you look back, he had so much momentum after 2011, and he had such a chance to capitalize on that in 2012, and never did it. And that's really where I look back and say that was just a huge missed opportunity. He could have followed up that 2011 season with a home run in 2012, and we would not be even, he could have had 2 bad years, we wouldn't be talking about this. He would still be the coach for maybe a year or 2, because that would have bought him some time. But you look back 2012, obviously have the rough start against Nebraska, that's what it is. Then they blow that thing at Notre Dame, play so poorly, and then sort of, trudge along, and they get into this Nebraska game where it looks like they're in control of the division. Remember, Ohio State was ineligible that year, so if they could have finished that game off, they beat Michigan State, they're in control of the division, they're possibly on their way to a Big Ten title game. Denard gets hurt, and then all of a sudden he's faced with the first real in-game decision he's got to make as a head coach, and he completely botches it by leaving Russell Bellamy in the game, not putting in Devin Gardner, and just watching the team kind of crumble in a huge moment, in a huge game. And that's when I remember the first time I walked out of the game. We walked out of the press conference, or walked out of it, I should say, and listened to his answers as to why he didn't make the proper decision at the time. And I remember thinking, it sounds like Brady's in over his head. That sounded like he didn't understand the moment. There wasn't enough urgency there. He wasn't coaching with enough, urgency, I guess, is probably the word, because it seemed like he always felt a little too comfortable that it's going to be fine, I'm going to have enough time to do all this and that and the other. That's not reality here, They went 8-5 immediately after 11-2 season, and that immediately hurt him because you lost so much momentum, and in football, when you lose that momentum, it's almost impossible to get it back. And then, they go into 2013 sort of hoping that 2012 was a mirage, not really changing anything, and obviously we saw that season kind of fell apart. At the end of the day, you can criticize them for being a little too loyal to assistants. I think that, firing Al Borges the way they did is fine, but then making the hire they made with Doug Nussmeier didn't really make sense because you just hired the same guy pretty much in a lot of ways. So there was a lot of things, but I think it really crumbled after the 2013 year. But I think if you look back even further, it started before then, and there were signs that momentum was lost, and he just wasn't going to be able to get it back.
Well, many of the players, Nick, took to Twitter on Tuesday evening with their thoughts. Pretty clear they respected and loved Coach Hoke, didn't they?
Yes, absolutely. And I was at Schembecker Hall, during the whole thing, while the players were in their meeting and came back out after Brady had told them that it was over with, and no one wanted to talk. If you remember when Rich Rodriguez was fired, I'm not saying that players didn't love Rich Rodriguez, but players talked. They weren't devastated. not all of them. These guys walked out, and many of them were wiping tears from their eyes. They had, the bags under their eyes from obviously crying inside the room. Many of them had the 100-mile stares. No one wanted to talk. They were all very, very shook up. I think a lot of them thought that Brady was still going to be their coach. They wanted him to still be their coach badly. You have to remember that this was a guy who had his locker room completely and totally under him, and a lot of people thought he'd lost it. And I kept telling people the whole year that he never once lost that locker room, because when you lose a room, you can tell. When guys start quitting on you and then guys just don't give any effort, that gets pretty obvious. And that never happened here. I mean, these guys weren't well coached, but they play hard, and they played hard, and they wanted to win so badly for Brady. They wanted him to save his job and those types of things. So, they were shook up, and they were not happy about it. I don't know if it was something where they, I didn't get the sense that it was a Nebraska type situation where they just felt it was so unfair and so ridiculous. But they were very upset, and it was a true sign to me that these guys really, really do still care for their head coach, for the guy who brought them here. A handful of them will leave. I'm sure that's what happens in these situations. More than a handful obviously will stay, but at the end of the day, I think they will always have a special spot for themselves with Brady Hoke. I'd like to have a relationship with him probably forever, because that's just the type of guy he is.
Nick, as a beat writer and someone who's been around for Brady's run, when you look back, how do you think you're going to remember the Brady Hoke era at Michigan?
I'll remember him as a really nice guy, a really genuine person. But at the end of the day, I think I'll remember it as a hire that was forced by an athletic director that didn't seem to totally understand how a coaching search worked, and didn't really seem to understand that he needed to get some help and needed to step back and look at everything that was going on outside of the fact, well, we need just to find somebody here that all these people are really going to like and not hate. And that's what it seemed at the end of the day. That seemed to be the goal of Dave Brandon when he hired him. That hiring process was late in the year. He took forever to get rid of Rich Rodriguez, and then did it, and then gave himself like 4 or 5 days, if that, to bring in Brady. You could have had Brady on December 1st. You could have had him. You could have had him, much earlier. You could have planned that way better than you did. But at the end of the day, it just seemed forced and seemed just like something that, coming on the outside looking in, it just didn't really ever seem like it would totally work. I mean, it was a shock that they went 11-2, and no one expected that. And then when you pulled yourself back and looked at that 11-2 season, I mean, there were so many things that happened that year. Some of the bounces and the breaks they never got those again. So I mean, it was something that just didn't ever seem like it would work. I didn't think it was ever a slam dunk home run. I don't think Brady had done enough in his previous jobs to merit being the head coach at a place like this with expectations like this. I think he's a great football coach, but at a place like this, it's going to be more than that. And that's, when you look at guys' resumes and what they've been able to accomplish, he was at Ball State, and he had a really, really good year at Ball State at the end, and he had some other decent seasons, but he had some really bad ones too, just like any other MAC coach that struggles to turn a MAC program around. And at San Diego State, he was only there 2 years. He had 1 9-win season, but he was only there 2 years. He was playing with somebody else's guys. So the development of it all, the wire-to-wire stuff, I just don't think that he was the guy, and I think it felt forced. I think it felt like a move that was made by an AD who wanted to not only exact control over the entire situation, because he knew he could do that, because he brought somebody in that was, Brady said he would have walked here, he would have crawled here, right? So I think it was Brandon making a move that gave him ultimate power, and also a move that just felt rushed, and it just felt like a guy who didn't really handle a search totally properly, and that's something they cannot do this time. And it really sounds like that's not going to be the case with Jim Hackett. So hopefully for Michigan fans, that doesn't repeat itself.
With us on our Michigan Game Day segment on this very big news week in Michigan football is beat writer Nick Baumgardner from MLive. Nick, while the search for a new coach begins, and we know that could take some time, Mike DeBoard will oversee the day-to-day operations of the football program. That's often overlooked, but a very important move, isn't it?
Yeah, it's very unique, because normally, and Michigan fans don't understand this, I don't think, because they never have gone through this type of thing ever. you've fired a coach now on December 2nd, and you don't have a bowl game, which means you don't get to practice, and you don't have an interim head coach waiting to play out the string for, 20 days while the kids get ready to play in a bowl game. There is nothing left. So, if you fire a guy, and I kept saying this, if you fire a guy on December 1st, December 2nd, and you want to wait until January, you have to find something, some way to have somebody kind of overseeing the farm for the next 4 weeks or whatever it might be. And, by basically saying Mike DeBoer is going to be in charge of the day-to-day operations means he's going to be sort of supervising all the kids. They can't work with them because they don't have practice. They can't, do all those types of things because they don't have any time left in the season. The season's actually over, which I know, people sometimes don't get because it's only been 3 years here and, 40 or 50 that they haven't had a bowl. So that's a little bit different. Normally when a coach is fired, you're either, playing a bowl game and somebody else takes it and finishes it out, or there's no bowl and you hire a guy in like 4 or 5 days and you move on. By putting Mike DeBoer in that spot to oversee things, I think it gives them someone to, not that all these kids know Mike DeBoer like they knew Brady Hoke or somebody on the staff, because that's not totally the case, but it does give them someone that's there in the chair making sure that all things don't completely collapse and fall apart while they can, take their time. They've given themselves the opportunity to take time, and that's important here, to not rush this. If they find somebody in 5 days and it's the right hire, then they'll make it. But if they feel like they need to take their time and wait some things out, then now they have the opportunity to do that. And if you hadn't put somebody in that spot like Mike DeBoer, then you wouldn't have that opportunity.
Well, as Hackett mentioned yesterday or Tuesday at the presser, the search began immediately. One of the interesting things that came out of that press conference, Nick, is what Hackett said when he mentioned he was going to employ an outside firm to assist in the search. That certainly is a new twist in a coaching search for Michigan, isn't it?
Yes, and it's an important one, and I think it's the right one for this situation. And I think it's probably something that should have happened 4 years ago, to be quite honest. I think it should have happened maybe even 7 years ago, because, we talk and we look back, and there's been books written about how they've fumbled coaching searches around here, whether it be somebody not knowing how to use their cell phone properly, or somebody just assuming something's going to happen, or somebody rushing something and just making sure everybody thinks they're the smartest guy in the room. And if you don't totally have a full grasp on how this works, you have to have help. And Michigan hasn't had to go through this every 3 or 4 years for 40, 50 years. They just haven't had it. So, and Jim Hackett, on his part, is a athletic director who, as of Tuesday, had the job for 33 days. So it's not like he's this wily veteran who's been through this. This isn't Jeremy Foley at Florida, who has been through multiple. He's a guy who found Urban Meyer. I mean, he's gone through tons of these things, so he knows what he's doing. You need, at some point, you're going to need help, and what you do here with these search firms is, number one, they're very expensive. I think Texas paid $270,000 for its search firm to help it find Charlie Strong. I think Colorado State actually paid more than $300,000 to help it find Jim McElwain, who looks like he's going to be Florida's new coach. So what these guys do in these situations, and Michigan did use one to find Dave Brandon, actually in their last AD search, they used a search firm. But what they do is they take care of a lot of the legwork that your AD doesn't have to do. They truly allow you to really take a look at as many candidates as you want. They can scour coast to coast, border to border, and really get background checks, get personality checks, get all the, details on a guy that, from so many more resources that you can't do on your own. So you can really actually look at more than, okay, everybody says, well, you have to have a short list, and that's fine, and Michigan does have a short list, but what you do with a search firm is you make that short list into a long list, and obviously if some things don't work out, and if you miss on a couple guys, all of a sudden you're not in a spot where you're panicked and you only have one more guy to do it. And if that doesn't work, then it's just a complete, mess. And we've seen that at Tennessee, for example, where 7 guys or whatever it is say no, and then they get stuck with Derek Dooley, and they have it's just terrible. So what the search firm does is it just gives you more options. It takes care of a lot of the legwork. That it means that Jim Hackett won't have to be in a plane for 24 hours a day for the next, 28 days, traveling all over the country to make sure that he doesn't leave any stone unturned. These guys will do it for you. So it's asking for help. It's asking for help from an outside source, which I think is also important, because you fall into a pretty big trap there when you just rely on people inside your own family, because you're getting advice sometimes from people who have their own agenda. These people are paid to do this job. They're paid to do it the way you want them to do it, and they will give you what you want. So I think that's an important step, and I think it was the right move by Jim Hackett. I wondered if he was going to do it, and when he said that, I thought that was the best thing for the whole situation.
Well, we all know Jim Harbaugh, probably the popular choice for head coach. We even heard at the Maryland game, student section, some of the other fans chanting his name. Yep. We even hear Les Miles still mentioned as a possibility, but I thought it was very interesting on Tuesday that Hackett was very clear that a Michigan man is not a prerequisite for the job. And you wrote about this on Wednesday. You said he went as far as to say he'd like to see that term go away, that being Michigan man. Very interesting, Nick.
Yeah, shocking, really. I think, and really kind of a long time coming, because I think that thing has been bandied about so much so that I think people inside the actual Michigan family sort of have the wrong understanding of what that really means. And I think that at its core of what that term is supposed to exemplify and embody, I don't think Jim Hackett wants to get rid of that, but I think he wants to get rid of the notion that people's resumes need to be let off by their M rings or their diplomas, and that's it. Every time any job comes open around here, obviously you're going to look at possible people that were here before as candidates. That's just natural. That happens everywhere. But why is that? Why at Michigan has that always been seemingly the only option? And that's sort of how it feels like a lot of times. And it feels like if you're not from here, then that person's going to be ostracized, or the minute something goes wrong, people's back are going to turn on them, and this, that, and the other. And so I think that it was very important for him to come out and say, that has to be readapted, or just get rid of the term altogether, because at the end of the day, what they're looking for are people that, understand selflessness, that understand putting the team and the program ahead of themselves, who are competitive and not arrogant, and who are, able and open and willing to do just about anything it takes within the confines of the rules to win football games or any games or anything in life. And I think that was the important note here, that's not going to drive the search. And it felt like it drove the search last time. And Brady Hoke would have had absolutely no business being and I don't dislike Brady, and I think he's a really nice guy, and I think he is a good football coach. But he would have had no business being Michigan's coach had he not spent 5 or 6 years as an assistant on the sidelines under Lloyd Carr. There's no way he would have been even on one short list. If those 5 or 6 years had been spent on a national title staff somewhere else, forget it. There's no way he'd have been on the short list, and that is the sort of thing we're talking about when Jim Hackett puts a crush to that. We're not going to just hire people, he's saying, because they spent 10 minutes here and they sort of know how to get here, and they don't have to use Google Maps or something like that. So I felt like that was important for him to say, and maybe the next coach is somebody that went here or played here or whatever, that understands it, and maybe because that might be the best candidate. Maybe that is Jim Harbaugh, Les Miles, whatever. But that's not going to be the only reason, why those people are hired. If those two guys are hired, everyone would say, well, they're hired because they're good coaches. And that's ultimately what you want, and that's what you want to, have this thing go as.
Well, at the presser, Hackett said on Tuesday that the search would begin immediately, but I think most of us would probably think that some back-channel talks from between representatives, they've been going on probably for a couple of weeks now. Oh, yeah, they've been going on for a while.
I don't know how hot and heavy they've been going on for weeks, but I know that they've been going on at least for, pretty heavily here for at least a week or two, in a sense where you're really you're back channel contacting people, engaging interest, and figuring out what you can do. You're doing that before you remove Brady Hoke officially, but you want to know sort of what your options are before you just jump in the pool. That obviously is going to that obviously happens. So it's been going on, but in terms of any kind of formal stuff, Hackett that'll be his job solely and totally at this point. It will be to find new coach. So what happens when you do open it up is everything just amplifies. So there's a lot of things at play here. Obviously, he says they'll have a lot of options. When you look at it, that means to me that they're going to have to be creative, and they're going to have, if they want a lot of options, they're going to have to go find a lot of options, because when you look at it on the surface, there's not a lot of ton of guys who you look at around the country and say, boy, that looks like a home run. They're going to have to do their homework and really find out who is and who isn't, and that's going to be important, I think. And the big thing here too is, everybody talks about Jim Harbaugh, obviously, and Les Miles as the two guys that seems to be a lot of people's wish list, whatever. Jim Harbaugh's situation is very interesting in that, we don't even at this point, I don't think he even knows what all of his options will be in 4 weeks. I mean, this is a guy who he's going to have any job available to him that he wants, possibly in the NFL or even in college. I mean, more than maybe even just Michigan if you want to go that far. So he's going to have just loads of options. But at the end of the day, Michigan has to exhaust their options with him. They have to find out, or Jim Hackett has to find out beyond any shadow of a doubt, whether or not Jim Harbaugh wants to take this job. And that answer has to have to, they have to get some sort of firm yes or no. And if they can't do that, if there's a firm no, then you move on quickly and you find your next guy. But if there's light at the end of that tunnel, they have to wait it out. And they've given themselves, and it sounds like to me that's what they're going to do, because they've given themselves that option with all the things we just talked about with Mike DeBoard, with search firms, and with everything else. You've given yourself time if you need to wait a little bit for someone. So if they're doing their, getting in there and getting into people's ears, and they get into the Harbaugh people's ears, and they get an answer on maybe wait a minute, then they're going to wait a minute. And, obviously the risk sort of increases the longer you wait. And Jim Hackett spoke yesterday about there's a date in his mind where they can't go any further. But, if there's a coach like that tells you, wait a second, maybe let me think about this, you wait a second, you let him think about it, because if there's one grand slam, whatever, in this entire thing, he is it. And there isn't a sure thing anywhere else. And I don't even know if he's a total sure thing, because in my opinion here, there are two guys in the country that can walk into any situation and have them humming at a national title level in a year or two, and that would be Urban Meyer and Nick Saban. And I don't see those two guys coming here anytime soon. I think Jim Harbaugh is probably the next best thing you can get. So if you have any chance at it, you ride that thing out as long as you can, and if that means you lose a couple more players to transfer, so be it. If you get Jim Harbaugh in the end, it would all be worth it. So, but you got to find that out. You can't go into it blind, and you can't just kind of spin the wheel of who knows. So you got to be educated, and you got to find that out, and that process starts right now.
Now, another takeaway from the last few weeks, Nick, is Jim Hackett, interim athletic director, is going to be around for a while, isn't he?
That became pretty clear yesterday, just with all the things he had spoke about, and really the Michigan man thing. At the end of the day, that kind of sold me on totally. I mean, we'd heard that he was going to be here for a while anyway, but him kind of dropping the hammer on that, and really, getting into more than just the coaching situation and everything else, just sort of, it just felt like a guy who, whether he was trying to or not, I don't think he was really intending to do this. It felt like a guy who was starting to carve out some sort of, this is going to be part of his legacy. Obviously, his legacy is going to be this hire, but I think part of his legacy could also be, the guy who helped them get away from this, I don't want to call it an incestuous situation, because football families are very important, and you always have to have those close and close-knit. But get them away from some of this toxic stuff that just seems to be allowed to go on here, where people are allowed to voice their opinions on who they personally want in the job and who they don't. What he said yesterday was, if you're really for this place, the place is more important than anything else. And what you think about someone as opposed to what they're able to accomplish on the field shouldn't matter. If that person is a terrific coach and a terrific leader and can get the job done and does it in the right way and doesn't cheat and doesn't do all those types of things, your opinion of him as a person is on the back burner. And that's ultimately, I think, where they're trying to get. And whether that was intentional or not, it felt like a guy who was really kind of setting down some ground rules on how this is going to go. And to me, when you do that, that means that you're planning on being here for a while. So I think his bags are unpacked, and however many months, years we're talking about, I don't know, but it sounds like he's going to be in the saddle for quite some time here.
Final thought, you wrote about this on Wednesday morning in MLive. You mentioned how organized and how well-spoken the press conference was, that orchestrated by Jim Hackett. But as you said, that's great. Now comes the hard part for the hire.
Yeah, this is the hardest thing in sports, and I've said this forever. It's the hardest thing in life, anyway. Hiring somebody, but this is the hardest thing, and nobody really ever understands that. I mean, this is this is legacies and millions of dollars and the program and just big moments. I mean, you screw these things up and you just bury yourself. And you screw up 3 in a row and you're, go ask Tennessee what that feels like. I mean, you do become irrelevant nationally. I mean, that is not impossible for Michigan. I mean, everybody believes that that's impossible. That's not impossible. That can't happen. You continue to struggle for a decade plus, and you're nowhere near any kind of contention. You're not going to do anything beyond that. It's going to take a long journey to get out of that mess. So they're very important. They're very, very hard because you can't predict the future. You can't predict all this stuff. I mean, there's little things that happen along the way. There's no guarantees. Everybody wants to tell me that it'd be a guarantee that Jim Harbaugh could come in here and they would win 10 games in a year or 2 years. There is no guarantees. If he doesn't have a quarterback on the roster, he's not winning anything right away. So there's just so many variables with people in general because you don't know, and that's why I think for a lot of years it was, we have good people here. Let's just hire the people that we know because they're here, and let's trump that over everything else because at least we know maybe what we're going to get. And that's not the right way of doing things. The right way of doing things is really challenging yourself and going out and finding the absolute best person. That's the hardest thing to do. But if you can actually pull it off, then you're golden. I mean, look at Bo Schembechler. Back when you go outside of a comfort zone, maybe you miss on a guy or 2 or 3, and then here you go, you take this guy and you're going out and finding somebody that nobody knows about, and you did a great job of evaluating it, and you did, and you take a chance, and it pays off for 40 years. And those things can happen. I mean, maybe not to that degree, but if you go out and you really make the right hire, you can change everything. But if you make the wrong one, then you're right back in a bad spot. So this is the hardest thing. This is the hardest thing for an athletic director who's been around for 25 years to do, let alone somebody who's been here for 33, 34 days. So this is the hardest thing going. And Jim Hackett has a ton of business experience, obviously, and one of his bigger parts of his world was doing just this, finding quality people and hiring them in their spots. So. I feel like they believe they have somebody who knows sort of how these processes work and understands what it takes. But this is the hard part, and this is the hardest thing anybody's going to do. And you got to get it right. And it's no room for error at all, and you're leaving a lot up to chance. So not an easy task, and something I'm sure that'll take some time, but very, very critical and crucial, and then sort of fascinating because this is going to be a search that could be really interesting before it's all over with.
Our guest here on our Michigan Game Day segment today has been Michigan beat writer Nick Baumgardner from MLive. I remind you to check out Nick over at MLive and his great work. You're going to be a busy guy in the coming weeks, Nick. No downtime, and we'll be sure to get you back on the show. Thanks for your time, Nick.
All right, Mike. Sounds good.
It's been a busy week on the Wolverine sports scene, and coming up next, we'll wrap it up for another week with Wolverine Quick Hits here on the Michigan Man Podcast on GBMW Go Blue, Michigan Wolverine. On Wolverine Quick Hits this week, Interim Athletic Director Jim Hackett will meet with the football team on Thursday, today. He will discuss what has transpired this week and talk about the transition period now underway. Final exams and Christmas break are coming up, and many players certainly have questions, so this will be a good opportunity for Hackett to address team concerns. In other news, junior Spike Albrecht's three-pointer from the top of the key broke a 63-63 tie with 26.7 seconds left, and helped the University of Michigan men's basketball team, ranked number 17 in the country, to a 68-65 victory over Syracuse in the ACC Big Ten Challenge on Tuesday inside Chrysler Center. Spike finished with 11 points, a career-high 9 assists, and 0 turnovers on the night. Junior Zach Irvin connected from downtown to give the Wolverines their largest lead of the night at 58-48 with 7 minutes left in the game, but the Orange responded with an 11-3 run that brought them within 2 points of the lead at 61-59, forcing a Michigan timeout with 2:55 left in the game. Freshman Ricky Doyle put back his own miss to make the score 63-59 with 1:50 to play. But Syracuse scored 2 straight buckets to tie the game at 63, forcing another U of M timeout with 51.8 seconds left. Then Spike hit his 3 to give the Wolverines the lead, and the Orange turned the ball over twice in the last 15 seconds to help Michigan hold on. The Wolverines had 5 double-figure scorers in the game, led by Irvin with a game-high 18 points. Junior Karis LeVert finished with 12 points and 6 assists, while freshman Cameron Chapman posted 10 points and a career-high 9 boards. Doyle finished with 12 points on 4 of 6 shooting, and he went 4 of 5 on free throw attempts. The Maize and Blue will take the floor again on Saturday afternoon inside Chrysler Center. Tip-off is scheduled for noon, and the game will be available on the Big Ten Network. Michigan is 6-1 heading into this weekend's action. On Friday night, Michigan hockey returns to Big Ten play with its first game of the season against Ohio State. Puck drop is slated for 7:05 p.m. at Yost Ice Arena. The Wolverines are 7-6 overall, 1-1 in Big Ten play. Senior Shannon Smith led 4 players in double figures in scoring with 26 points and made it a double-double with 10 rebounds as the University of Michigan women's basketball team earned an 83-69 win over Wake Forest on Wednesday night as part of the Big Ten ACC Challenge at Chrysler Center. Smith was 10 of 15 from the field and 6 of 8 from the free throw line and added 6 assists and 3 steals. Senior Saisha Gori had 17 points and 4 steals, while junior Madison Ristovsky had 13 points, including a trio of 3-pointers. Freshman Caitlin Flaherty scored 12 points for the Maize and Blue, and sophomore Sierra Thompson had 9 points and 4 assists. Michigan returns to the court on Tuesday, hosting Princeton at Chrysler Center at 6:30 p.m. in a doubleheader with the men's team. Coach Barnes Arico's Wolverines are off to a very good 6-1 start this season. There will be no shortage of news in the coming weeks. To stay on top of it, visit www.gbmwolverine.com and become a member today. The coaching search, player transfers, Michigan basketball and hockey, there is a lot going on. Stay in the Wolverine loop this busy holiday season. Visit www.gbmwolverine.com and sign up for free membership today. Have a thought on the coaching search or anything else Maize and Blue? My phone lines are open 24/7 for you to call and record your thoughts. I would enjoy hearing from you. The number is 313-263-4842. That number again is 313-263-4842. Or you can email me at themichiganmanpodcast@yahoo.com. If you get the show from iTunes, make sure you take a minute to give us a review. While at iTunes, you can sign up for free weekly delivery of the show to your laptop or desktop. You can also find the show app in the store. For Android users, the app is available from Amazon.com. Just get the free Podcast Box app, and our show is there. For Windows users, the show app can be found in the Windows 8 App Store. We are also on 2 other great free apps, Stitcher Radio On Demand and TuneIn Radio, so check one of those out. It's been a crazy week for Michigan football, and we are in for several weeks of rumors regarding who will be the next head coach. Only Jim Hackett and the people he's working with really know what's going on. We, of course, will stay on top of the story through the coming weeks. Next week, I'll be on vacation, but the show, as usual, must go on. We'll turn our attention to a happier topic right now. That's Michigan basketball. Wolverine beat writer Rod Beard from the Detroit News will be with me to discuss our very young team and the very impressive start they are off to this season. It's going to be a busy December and January, and I hope you'll join me each week for the latest news and great guests on Michigan athletics. That will do it for this week's show. Again, we're coming to you a bit late this week because of the coaching news, but we will be back on Wednesday on our regular schedule. Have a great Wolverine week, everyone. I'm your host, Mike Fitzpatrick. Until next week, take care, and as always, go Blue. Thanks for listening to the Michigan Man podcast on GBMW Go Blue Michigan Wolverine. You can find us on the web at www.gbmwolverine.com. That's www.gbmwolverine.com. For audio posts or other fan feedback, please call our listener line at 313-263-4842. That's 313-263-4842. Email fan feedback to the Michigan Man Podcast at yahoo.com. That's the Michigan Man Podcast at yahoo.com. The Michigan Man Podcast on GBMW Go Blue Michigan Wolverine is produced at the studios of Robin Lynn Productions, Allen Park, Michigan. The Michigan Man Podcast is not affiliated with the University of Michigan. Go Blue!